Hello everybody, Nina Soden here. It is Friday and that means it is time to talk books. It is time for my Friday reads. Okay, before we get into today's selection, please take a second to hit subscribe somewhere up there and share this video with your friends and click like if you are feeling generous. All right, so today's book is by Joe Hill. He is an award-winning author, and it is a national bestseller called 20th Century Ghosts. This is the cover. Big bugs. All right, this is a collection of short stories by Joe Hill. I'll go ahead and read the back for you. Amusing, moving, horrifying. Ghost runs the full spectrum. That is from USA Today. Imogen is young, beautiful, and dead, waiting in the Rosebud Theater one afternoon in 1945. Francis was human once, but now he's an 8-foot-tall locust, and everyone in California will tremble when they hear him sing. John is locked in a basement stained with the blood of half a dozen murdered children, and an antique telephone, long since disconnected, rings at night with calls from the dead. Nolan knows but can never tell what really happened in the summer of '77, when his idiot savant younger brother built a vast cardboard fort with secret doors leading into other worlds. The past isn't dead. It isn't even past. Okay, there you go. That is the back. You can get this book on Amazon or probably any bookstore that is around. Let's talk critical points. Okay, so to be honest, when I started reading this selection of short stories, I had a very hard time getting into it. Many of the stories were more of science fiction or horror than rather than what I would consider a ghost story. And I was expecting a ghost story. It was called The 20th Century Ghosts. But that is actually the name of the second story in this collection. The second story is actually called 20th Century Ghosts. So that's where the title comes from. I think there would have been a better... I'm not sure what a better title for this collection would be, but definitely it isn't a collection of ghost stories. So that kind of threw me off. I was expecting something else. And a lot of these are science fiction or horror, which I'm not opposed to. They just weren't really my cup of tea. Writing was powerful. Joe Hill has a wonderful way. No denying it, he is a good author. And he has an active imagination, and he has a great way of giving you very spot on disturbing, I guess, visuals. And that isn't to say that disturbing is bad, but disturbing. A lot of his stories were disturbing. I guess that's the only way I can describe them. All right, so there are 15 short stories in this collection, which is awesome. And they are all pretty much different. There are no two stories that are the same. So 15, that's awesome. I think some of them could have been longer. I think some of them could have been books as opposed to short stories, but he did do short stories. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like them all. There was very little character development in the stories. The formatting of how he wrote was different from story to story. It wasn't consistent how he did dialogue. Even how he formatted it was not very consistent. So I'm gonna just take this time and talk about 3 stories out of the 15 that I actually enjoyed. The first one is 20th Century Ghosts. It's the second story in this series, or in this collection. And this is the description per Amazon. The Rosebud Theater is an old-style movie palace, haunted by the semi-legendary spirit of a young woman. The girl died during a screening of The Wizard of Oz, appears frequently throughout the 20th century, and occasionally starts conversations with a select few moviegoers. The story is told by Alex Sheldon, the theater owner, who worries about his approaching mortality and what will happen to the Rosebud after he retires. Really, he's wondering what will happen to the ghost, to this young girl who he was close to, friends with when she was alive. She came into the theater, they talked about movies, and then she died during the screening of The Wizard of Oz. So he feels that she comes back because she has unfinished business. She has not seen the end of the movie. All right, so my thoughts on this story. I did like it because it was a ghost story, and that is the reason I wanted to read this book, is for a ghost story. The ending was a little bit too abrupt for me, and that's with a lot of these stories. I felt like it was like moving along, boom, stop. Okay? And with this one, the ending wasn't at all where I was expecting it to go either. I'm not unhappy with where it went. It just wasn't where I was expecting it to go. I did enjoy the journey through this story, and I wanted more of the young girl. I wanted more of the ghost, whereas we got a lot more of the owner of the theater and some backstory and all of that. I wanted more of the ghost. It was a ghost story. That's what I wanted. And we got a lot less of her than we did of everything else. All right, the next one that I want to talk about is The Black Phone. So the Amazon description of The Black Phone is this. 13-year-old John Finney is kidnapped by a man named Al. Trapped in a basement room, the boy's only hope may lie in a mysterious, disconnected black phone hanging on the basement wall. The phone rings at night with the whispers of the kidnapper's previous and now dead victims. So maybe I really enjoyed this one too because of the ghost aspect. The ringing of the phone, the voices that you hear are the dead, the previous victims now dead. So that's, I guess that maybe lends itself to being a little bit more ghost-like for me. So my thoughts on this one is, as a mom, this story just, whoa, captures my worst fear. The fear that something would happen to one of my children, that one of them would be abducted or hurt, is something that I have had nightmares about since becoming pregnant with my first child. And I think that a lot of parents feel that way. I mean, the worst thing in the world would be if something happened to my children. And so I think that Hill captures the emotion of that experience perfectly. And it makes you feel, the way he writes it makes you feel what John is feeling. It makes you almost even smell or taste the musty, dungy basement that he's in. And you can hear the ringing of this old phone. So it made me hate the fact that I couldn't reach into the book and protect this young boy and help him, okay? And that was the sign that this was a good story. I enjoyed this one. I felt like it could have been longer. I think he could take this concept and turn it into a novel. It doesn't have to be a short story because, again, I think that it ends quite abruptly and there's not much detail given. There's not a lot of character development, no past history, no story development. It's just, boom, we're in it and he's kidnapped and then he's in a basement and we don't know why the guy's not coming downstairs, but there's a reason. And so, because the voice on the other end of the phone says there's a reason he can't come down. So it's not complete. The story wasn't complete for me. I felt like there was more and some unanswered questions and holes that I wanted to be filled. All right, my last one is Last Breath. Amazon says that the Amazon description says, the story concerns Dr. Allinger, an old man who runs a museum of silence, which contains the last breaths of various people, some being famous figures such as Edgar Allan Poe. All right, this is a super simple story. It's one of the shortest ones in the book. And it has this creepiness factor that is in it, and it's awesome, and it's not disturbing, but it is creepy, and I really liked that. And again, you have the silence of the last breath of these dead people, and I guess that's where the ghost factor comes in. Although you don't hear a ghost or see a ghost, it's just the silence. And I like how he utilizes that. So it was simple. It was relatable, I guess. And there were only 4 characters, a man, a woman, and their child, who come to this museum of silence, and the man that runs the museum. And it was very simple and elegantly written. And it makes you wonder about life and death, and it does so in a way that none of the other stories do. All right, so that was my 3rd story. Characters, again, there is not a whole lot of character development throughout the book, although there were characters throughout the collection that you can relate to, that you do root for. And there was probably one in every story that you wanted to find out what would happen to them. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe there wasn't one in every story, but definitely I could relate to some of the stories. Some of them I wanted to get through them. Hill's writing didn't make me love the characters. In fact, more often than not, I despised the characters, or feared maybe that somewhere in this world there are people like them. Other than the guy that turns into a locust. That's probably not even remotely close. But they're just settings that he put them in just either made them grotesque, disturbing, or fearful, but not in a horror movie or horror book fearful way. All right, the appearance, the cover, there you go, you can take a look at it. It portrays the bugs, it portrays the locusts, and you won't understand that one until you read the story, Locusts Sing, or you will hear the locusts sing, so you won't really understand why, but it was one of my least favorite stories, and probably just because it was gross. I felt it was gross. All right, my favorite quotes from this book are, the first one, I have 2. So the first one is, "You get an astronaut's life whether you want it or not. Leave it all behind for a world you know nothing about. That's just the deal." And that was art in pop art. The story was bizarre. It was about a young boy who was a blow-up. He was like a blow-up doll, and he was a boy, but he had normal parents, and yeah, it was a weird story, but I really liked that quote. All right, and the second quote is from Allinger in Last Breath. This is the one that I talked about where you hear the last breath is of people dying, the silence. And the quote is, "Wait, there are all different kinds of silence. The silence in a seashell, the silence after a gunshot. His last breath is still in there. Your ears need time to acclimate. In a while, you'll be able to make it out. His own particular final silence." And I just love that idea that we all have our own silence, And if you think about it, if you're married, or if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a friend, and they're upset with you and they're giving you that silent treatment, that is a different silence than if you're cuddled up on a couch and watching a good movie or just reading a good book, and you're with the one you love, and you're just silent together. It's a completely different feel and sound to that silence. And that's what he's getting at. We all have our own silence. There's so many different types of silence. All right. That is Friday Reads for today. I hope you would enjoy. Comment below if you have read this book by Joe Hill, and let me know your thoughts. What was your favorite short story in this? What was the least favorite short story in this? If you have another Joe Hill book that you think I should read, let me know. I am open to that. He's a good author. I will definitely pick up another book from him. All right, everybody, don't forget to click subscribe and check out my latest videos. And if you enjoy them, please share them with your friends and hit like. All right, have a great day and happy reading.